In Creo Parametric, you can define the CNC toolpaths for manufacturing your parts. One of the kinds of sequences that you can create is a roughing NC sequence. And this is intended for high-speed mold machining and for machining pockets. It creates more efficient toolpaths. Before I create this roughing sequence, I want to show you a mill window that I created in another video. I'm going to right mouse click on it and choose Edit Definition. So there you can see the outline that is defined with a sketch. Also for this one, I defined a depth for it. You can see that highlighted in that light blue color. And later on, I will change this to turn this off. But anyhow, let's hit the check mark to get out of the edit definition of the mill window and start creating our roughing sequence. So I will click on the command. And the first thing that I need to define is a mill window. And just be aware that a mill window is the only kind of input that is allowed for roughing and later on re-roughing sequences. So let me pick my window that I just showed to you. You also have the ability to specify edge loops that you want to close, but I am happy with that outline that I have selected. Then we have our tool. By default, it is using the previous tool, which is a 1/4 inch flat end mill, and I'm happy with this one, so I'm going to use it. If you go to the tool manager, you can see what it looks like. And in this case, I'm using a solid tool and it has a holder. Let me cancel out of the tool setup dialog box. You can also turn on the tool preview, which just shows an outline of essentially the diameter and the length. But anyhow, for the next thing, let's go to our parameters tab. And so here are some of the different basic parameters. I'm going to change some of these values, like I'm going to use a cut feed of 100. For step over, I'm going to use a slightly smaller value, a value of 3. And then we have our max step depth. I'm going to use a value of 6 for that. Our clear distance, let's make that a value of 5. And the spindle speed, mine is going to be 2000. So that is good for the basic parameters. As always, you can click on this icon to open up the full parameters. Right now, we're just looking at the basic parameters. There is an all button. And again, you can see that there are just tons and tons of different parameters for getting exactly the toolpath that you want. And so let me jump into a slide deck just to go over some of these different parameters. All right, first off, there are a bunch of parameters that pertain to the scans, the entry and the exit, and the scans deal with how the slices are defined. And so you have a bunch of different values that you can choose for your open area scan and your closed area scan. The default value is constant load. That's what I'm going to use. But you also have values like maintain cut type, maintain cut direction, follow contour, type spiral, and type 3. Type 3 is where it is going to machine your different areas zone by zone. And also you have parameters for controlling the open area entry and the closed area entry. And the closed area entry has options for either using a tangent helix or a ramp. For your step depth, tolerance, and scallops, you can specify your max step depth like I had chosen. And you also have a value for minimum step depth. You can use inside tolerance and outside tolerance instead of the default symmetric tolerance. And also you can turn on rough scallop control. This will add additional slices so that you can control the scallop height. And with rough scallop control, if you turn it on, you can choose if it's going to add those slices during the main slices or during the bottom up or after at the end of all the different regular slices. And if you have this rough scallop control, you can specify the maximum height value of the little scallops. And lastly, you have a bunch of different options for handling your corners. And so you can choose if you want to smooth the sharp corners, and the default value is no, but you can also choose constant radius, radius by angle or max radius. And if you are using one of the options to smooth the sharp corners, you can specify the smooth radius. You can also turn on progressive slowdown for your corners. By default, corner slowdown is set to no, but if you change it to yes, you could specify slowdown length, slowdown percent, and the number of slowdown steps. All right, let's jump back over to Creo Parametric. Okay, given that I did not actually change any of the advanced parameters, let me click the cancel button to get out of there. Let's take a look at the other different tabs. We have a clearance tab, and in this case, I see that my retract plane is really high in this situation. I know that professional machinists make fun of people who spend a lot of time cutting air. If I want to adjust the retract plane, I can and move it closer to my part. Let me just drag it down. Let's do a value of -10. -1, 0, hit the enter key. You can also specify start and end points. From the options tab, you can specify a cutting tool adapter. From the tool motions tab, you can customize the motion by adding in additional steps. And the process tab is used for adding time information if you're using Pro Process for NC. And the properties tab, this is where you can change the name, and you can add a comment that can be output to the cutter location data. Speaking of which, this button allows us to view the cutter location data, and you can see all the information that would be generated. It is a lot. And we can also use this icon in order to preview the motion that would be created, but it's much better. Let me first click on the References tab to close the Properties tab so it's not cluttering up the graphics area. But as always, we can go to this drop-down list, and here we have our icon for entering into a mode for simulating the material removal. So I will click on that. And right now it is doing some calculating. I always like to bump up the precision to medium. Yes, it's going to reset the simulation, so let's let it do the math. And I won't change any of the other different options. Let me choose to play the simulation. And now we can hit the play button, and we can see how it is machining. Let me rotate a little bit so you can see down into the part a little bit more. So there we have it. There you can see a preview of the machining. That is pretty cool. I can also go and turn off the follow option so you can see better what is going to be produced. So that is good. And like Maxwell Lord says in that awful Wonder Woman movie, life is good, but it can be better. Let's take a look at making a change. So I'm going to close the play simulation, close out of the material removal simulation, and I'm going to hit the check mark to complete this. But let's go back to our window. Here it is, this window. I'm going to right click on it and edit definition. I'm going to go to the depth, and I'm going to turn off the depth so it doesn't stop at that surface that is highlighted in the light blue color. I'm just going to let my mill window go down as far as it needs to go down. So now let's go to our roughing sequence, and I'm going to edit definition just so I can get back to the material removal simulation. I'm going to make another video where I'll show you how you can create material removal features. But anyhow, also as I'm doing this, let's hide that mill window. I really don't need to see it anymore. Let me make sure that we're going to get the toolpaths follow, and I will play the simulation. Actually, let's turn off that toolpath. I just want to make sure it's turned off so we can just see what's going to be cut out. And I'm going to crank up the speed a little bit because it's going to do even more cutting this time. And so now let's watch and enjoy. So look at all those additional pockets that got machined by taking out the depth of the mill window. That is just awesome. So let's click the close button and close out of the material removal simulation and hit the check mark in order to complete our sequence. And once again, we can right click on our NC sequence in the model tree. And here we can play the path. And then I will go, I just want to make sure I don't highlight anything. Let me move this up here. I should really just turn off my pre-selection highlighting. There we go. Okay, so now I will hit the play button and let's watch this with the actual tool. So there you have it, just neat, cool stuff. And if you're watching the motion, you're like, hey, it didn't get that close to the walls. Well, in the next video, we will take a look at how to create a re-roughing sequence. Re-roughing is so that you can take essentially a previous roughing sequence and then redo it with a smaller tool in order to get closer to your reference model that you want to generate.